Welcome everyone to the 7th round of the FIDE Grand Swiss 2025, the day after the rest day, which means that the players will be here with more energy. You can see Divya Deshmukh coming in. She plays each and every game on board number 57. She has a fixed board, and that's because a camera is installed there, and FIDE recognizes that Divya has taken a very brave, bold decision here to play in the open section after winning the FIDE World Cup 2025, and it's very interesting to see. There we have Aditya Mittal, who just passed by and wished Divya the best. All these youngsters grew up together. Aditya, Divya, Gukesh, Nihal, all of them, and now are playing in world-class events together. Divya playing with the white pieces today against Velimir Ivic. He's Serbia's number 3 player, rated 2630. Until now, Divya is at 2.5 out of 6. There you have Ivic. He's born in 2002 and he is 23 years old. Handshake and we are ready to go. Divya with the white pieces opens the game with 1 e4. That's the thing about Divya. She can play e4, d4, all sorts of openings. Sicilian is Ivic's choice, and I think it's a logical choice. He would want to beat Divya with the black pieces. e6 played. And now will Divya go for the open Sicilian? No, she goes for b3, slightly offbeat. Knight comes out to c6 and bishop to b2. With this line, you kind of put your bishop on the long diagonal. Queen comes to c7 and Divya now pushes her pawn to c4. She's got this Marozzi setup here, and if she gets in d4, she would be quite happy here. But Ivic has attacked the pawn on e4. You could push e5 here, but Divya decides to develop her knight to c3 and a6, a useful move to stop the knight from jumping in and attacking the queen. g3 played here. So you want to go bishop g2, castles, and quickly develop your pieces. Rook b8 is quite ambitious, trying for b5, bishop to g2, and he plays b5. Now, one of the things that black is doing here is neglecting his development slightly. The king is on e8, the bishop on f8. Meanwhile, Divya captures the pawn, and after ab5, I guess simply castles. Now this is getting intense, because if Ivic goes b4 trying to get the e4 pawn, it would be quite risky. Knight a4. If you take here, knight takes e4, rook c1, d4 coming in, it would be quite risky. So Ivic goes e5 and suddenly kind of changes his plan, stops Divya's d4, and already you can feel it that the initiative is with white. Now rook c1, putting pressure on c5. That's what Divya does. She's like, now I don't care that you take my e-pawn. In fact, be my guest, because that opens up your king. And I'm going to put pressure here. Ivic goes d6. But now, guys, think about this. When the opponent's king in the center, you open up the position. Beautiful move. And knight d7 played. Now notice, if you took here, knight d4, pawn takes, and e5 unleashes the bishop here, which is the reason why Ivic went on the defensive. But now after pawn takes pawn, he must take here with the knight. It's an important move, and I think black's position is okay. He takes with the pawn here, and that is not a good idea, because Divya now can pop out her bishop on h3 and attack the knight. Now it's not an easy move to find here, because it's slightly unconventional, but Divya finds it. Bishop to h3. Love it. The threat, of course, is to take here and pick up the pawn. Knight to b6 played, attacking the bishop here on c8, but Divya, fearless to the core, takes on c5. If bishop c5, you have bishop c8, taking then on c5. But Ivic is like, Divya, why did you give me a free piece here? Well, nothing is free in this world. especially when you are facing Divya Deshmukh. Knight a6 fork. Amazing move. And Ivic is in big trouble. It's true that Divya's rook is hanging here, but there's no time to take it. After knight takes b8, if you decide to take on f1, then knight takes c6 is hanging. So that's the reason why Ivic takes it back with knight b8, and now Divya can calmly play her rook to e1. White has a rook, black has two pieces. It looks like black's position is fine, but not really. Bishop takes e5, and you can't castle because of rook c7, so you have to spend another move. But Divya, boom, takes on g7, making sure that the king cannot castle. That king's fate is to be meant to remain in the center. Knight e5, another powerful blow. If you take the bishop, I take your knight. If you take my knight, I take it back with the bishop. Such tactical play here. Bishop goes back to d7. You can now chop off the bishop on d7. But Divya goes knight c6, which looks also fairly good. And now bishop takes on c6, attacking the e4 pawn. The bishop is also hanging on g7. Divya goes queen c2. You know, there's something to be said about Divya's style of play. She's never really defensive, always counter-attacking. Bishop to d4, attacking the knight here. Rook g6 is played. I think a good move by Ivic, trying to get the rook into a defensive, sort of shoring up his weaknesses. Rook d1, and now bishop to c6. Once again, attacking the e4 pawn. But Divya doesn't mind it. Bishop e4, and she's like, your king is exposed. Queen e2 played. Pressure here, threatening a check. And I think bishop c5, rook c5, rook e6 should be played when Ivic has good defensive chances. But he goes rook e6 directly. And Divya now goes in with a check. Knight goes back to d7. And now queen takes queen taken. Bishop takes, and we reach an endgame where Divya will have a rook, opponent will have a knight and a bishop, and Divya has two pawns. Well, difficult to say who's better here. Clearly, white is the one pressing, but is it enough to win the game is the question. Bishop d5 played, and now Divya calmly will trade the rooks because, you know, rook plus knight bishop is a very good combination, and there you see Ivic doesn't want to trade the rooks, but he has to because Divya rook e3 and f3 coming up. Knight to b6, and she goes rook d1, another classy move, kind of dominating the black pieces. Bishop goes back to c6. She goes rook d4, beautiful, attacking the b4 pawn. You have knight to d5, trying to defend here, also looking at the weakened c3 square. Rook takes rook. I think you must take it back with the pawn, but he takes with the king. And now it does seem like black's pieces are active, but notice the h pawn. It's lonely, and you can go here and attack it. In fact, first Divya brings her king in, and I love the way she's playing this. Bishop to b5 played, trying to take control of this diagonal. King d2. King comes up, and now when h5 is played, she moves the rook to h4 and asks Ivic, what are you doing about this pawn here, my friend? If you move the knight to defend it, b4 is hanging, and this was the 40th move. f6 played, and Divya gets 50 extra minutes on the clock. She now chops off the pawn on h5, and this is a totally winning position for white now, especially because you have the h pawn running ahead. Now a4 looks like a strong move because if you take en passant, I'll take your knight, which is powerful, but Divya goes just one step ahead, and she has the same idea. You can't take, c3 is hanging. Ivic goes knight to b1 check, and in a way he will get the a3 pawn, but his knight is trapped on a3. It's kind of in such a bad position, and Divya goes rook h4. No way to save the b4 pawn. Very well calculated there. And so then what will happen next is that b4 will hang, h pawn will run down the board, b pawn will also be super strong. She takes on b4, And this game is a perfect representation of when a rook is better than two minor pieces. When there are pawns on both sides, when there are passers, when the minor pieces don't have fixed squares where they can calmly sit, then the rook becomes much more strong in the position. King d2, bishop d5, but guys, there's no counterplay here. Rook to b6, pinning the knight here. Divya, very clinical. King to d7, and now brings her king up, threatening to push the pawn. Also, the king could come forward. This is over. Divya has played an incredible game. Incredible is the word. Because it's not like her opponent made any errors. Ivic resigns. It was just complete outplay. You know, she outplayed her opponent from the opening and then went on to the middle game, and even the end game was played with such accuracy. Divya Deshmukh moves to 50% score here with 3.5 on 7, gaining 15 ELO points, moving confidently towards the 2500 ELO mark.